A talented young architect named Daniel lets pride over his early success convince him he no longer needs anyone's advice. And it takes losing everything on his biggest project for him to learn that humility, not talent, is what actually builds something lasting. Have you ever been so sure you were right that you stopped listening to anyone else? Have you ever felt so proud of what you built that you forgot who helped you build it? Today's story is about a young architect named Daniel, a man who believed his talent alone made him better than everyone around him until one project, one mistake, and one phone call brought everything crashing down. Before we begin, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel, because here we share honest stories about pride, humility, and the lessons that only come after we fall. And this story might change the way you listen to the people around you. Daniel Reyes was 29 years old, and by every measure, he was talented. He had graduated top of his class. He designed his first building at 24. By 28, his name was already known in his city. Clean lines, bold shapes, buildings people stopped to photograph. He worked long hours. He sketched late into the night, ideas pouring out of him faster than he could draw them. His mentor, an older architect named Mr. Alvarez, had trained Daniel for 6 years, teaching him not just design, but patience, structure, and care. Talent gets you noticed, Mr. Alvarez used to tell him. Humility keeps you standing, Daniel used to nod along. But the more praise he received, the less he remembered those words. By the time Daniel opened his own small firm, he had stopped calling Mr. Alvarez for advice. He told himself he didn't need it anymore. When his young team members raised concerns about a design, he brushed them off with a smile. Trust me, he would say. I know what I'm doing. His assistant, a careful young engineer named Priya, often double-checked his numbers quietly, without telling him, just in case. She never mentioned it. She didn't want to bruise his confidence. Then came the offer that would change everything: a contract to design the tallest building in the city's new business district. Daniel's name would be on it forever. This is my building, Daniel told his small team, his eyes bright with excitement. This one's going to prove I don't need anyone looking over my shoulder. Priya glanced at him carefully. Just, let's have someone review the structural calculations before we submit, she said gently. Daniel waved his hand. There's no time, and no need. I've got this. Daniel worked around the clock for months, barely sleeping, refusing help from anyone outside his small team. When Priya suggested bringing in an outside structural consultant, just to check the load calculations one final time, Daniel shook his head. I've reviewed it myself 3 times, he said. I don't need someone else telling me what I already know. The design was approved. Construction began. Daniel stood at the groundbreaking ceremony in a new suit, cameras flashing, his name printed on a large sign behind him. For a moment, it felt like everything he had worked for. Then, 4 months into construction, a routine inspection found a problem. A section of the support structure had been miscalculated, a small error in the original numbers, one that Priya had quietly flagged months earlier in an email Daniel never fully read. The city halted construction immediately. Investigators reviewed every document. Daniel sat in a small meeting room, his hands shaking. As an inspector read the report aloud, this kind of error, left uncorrected, could have caused a structural failure once the building reached full height. The inspector said flatly, "You're fortunate this was caught in time. The project was suspended." Daniel's firm lost the contract. Investors pulled out. Within weeks, news of the failed inspection spread through the industry. Clients who once wanted Daniel by name suddenly stopped calling. His small firm, built on his talent and his name, began falling apart around him. One evening, alone in his empty office, Daniel found the old email from Priya, the one flagging the exact error, sent months before construction began. He read it 3 times, his chest tightening with every word. He thought about the frightened faces of his team as investors withdrew. He thought about his own name, once printed proudly on that groundbreaking sign, now attached to failure. That night, Daniel called the only person he could think of. His hands trembled as he dialed. "Mr. Alvarez," Daniel said quietly. "I need your help." There was a pause on the line. "I wondered when you'd call," Mr. Alvarez said, not unkindly. They met the next morning at a small CAF. Daniel, exhausted and humbled, told him everything: the ignored email, the rushed calculations, the pride that told him he didn't need anyone else's eyes on his work. Mr. Alvarez listened quietly, then said one thing Daniel would never forget. "Talent can build a name, Daniel. But only humility builds something that lasts. Daniel sat with those words for a long time. For the first time in years, he didn't argue. The weeks after that meeting were some of the hardest of Daniel's life. He had to lay off half his small team. He personally called each client whose trust he had lost, admitting the mistake without excuses. It was humiliating, but he forced himself to make every call. He also asked Priya to stay, if she was willing. When she agreed, Daniel sat across from her and said something he had never said to anyone at his firm before. "I should have listened to you," he said. "I was wrong, and I'm sorry." Priya nodded quietly. "I know," she said. "I'm glad you finally see it." Slowly, Daniel began rebuilding, but differently this time. He asked Mr. Alvarez to review his projects personally, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. He brought in outside engineers to double-check every major calculation, even when it slowed him down. He started attending industry meetings, not to be noticed, but to listen. It wasn't easy. Old habits pulled at him constantly. One evening, an old colleague invited him to a networking event, the kind where Daniel used to show off his boldest, riskiest designs to impress investors. "Come on," his friend said. "Remind everyone who Daniel Reyes is." Daniel almost said yes, out of old pride. Instead, he said, "I think I'll stay in tonight and review these plans with my team instead." Another week, a young architect at a conference challenged one of Daniel's older, more famous designs, questioning a technical choice publicly in front of a room full of people. The old Daniel would have argued, defended himself loudly, protected his reputation at any cost. Instead, Daniel simply said, "That's a fair point. I'd actually like to hear more of your thinking on it after this." The room went quiet for a moment, surprised. Then the conversation moved on, calmer than anyone expected. Months became a year. Daniel's small firm grew again, slower this time, but steadier. He took on smaller projects first, ones he personally reviewed with total care alongside his team. Clients noticed something different about him now, not just his talent, but his willingness to ask questions, to listen, to admit when he didn't know something. Eventually, the city reopened bids for a new mid-sized public library, a project far smaller than the tower he had lost, but one that mattered deeply to the neighborhood it would serve. Daniel's firm submitted a proposal reviewed 3 times by 3 different engineers, exactly the way Mr. Alvarez had once taught him. They won the contract on the day the library's construction finally finished. Daniel stood outside the building with his small team beside him, Priya included, still there after everything. The building wasn't the tallest structure in the city. It wasn't the boldest design he had ever created, but it was solid, careful, and built with more hands and more eyes than just his own. Mr. Alvarez came to see it, walking slowly through the front doors, running his hand along the railing Daniel had personally reviewed for times before approving. "This one feels different," Mr. Alvarez said quietly. "It is different," Daniel said. "I built it with people, not just for them to admire me." That evening, Daniel drove past the old construction site, the one where his tower had been halted years earlier. It was finally under new ownership now, being completed by another firm. He parked for a moment, looking at the unfinished structure through his car window. He didn't feel bitterness anymore. He felt something quieter gratitude, strangely, for the mistake that had once felt like the end of everything. Later that week, his mother visited him at his new, smaller office. She looked around at the modest space, so different from the grand tower he once dreamed of building. "You used to want the tallest building in the city," she said gently. Daniel smiled. "I used to want everyone to see my name," he said. "Now I just want to build things that don't fall down." His mother reached for his hand. "I think this is the proudest I've ever been of you," she said. "Not because of what you built, because of who you became while building it." Pride convinces us we don't need anyone else's eyes on our work, our decisions, our lives. But pride doesn't protect us, it blinds us, right up until the moment it breaks. Talent can build a name, but only humility builds something that lasts. You don't have to lose everything to learn this lesson. Sometimes all it takes is choosing, today, to listen to the one voice you've been too proud to hear. So ask yourself, is there someone in your life right now trying to tell you something you've been too proud to listen to? If this story meant something to you, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment telling you